World of Warcraft is a massively multiplayer online role-playing game, or MMORPG for short, that was released by Blizzard Entertainment on November 23, 2004. With over 100 million accounts created over the game's lifetime, it holds the Guinness World Record as the most popular MMORPG of all time, and at its peak in October 2010 had 12 million subscribers. First announced by Blizzard at the European Computer Trade Show in September 2001, and following a development period of roughly 4 to 5 years, which included extensive testing, World of Warcraft launched to very positive reviews, regularly receiving a critic score of over 90%. Several awards followed, and it quickly became the best-selling PC game of 2005. Little did anyone know that both the game and its users would soon be shook to their very core. On September 13, 2005, Blizzard released patch 1.7.0, titled Rise of the Blood God. Amongst other things, this included new quests, game tweaks, and a new 20-person quest, Zul'Gurub. Needless to say, people really wanted to take part in the raid, so many guilds assembled their strongest players and set straight off to Stranglethorn Vale, where the raid was located. There they would battle with many bosses and sub-bosses, before finally encountering the main boss, Hakar the Soulflare. With Hakar's addition in patch 1.7.0, Blizzard also introduced a new debuff, called Corrupted Blood. For those not in the know, a debuff is the opposite of a buff. It's an effect that, while it persists, hampers its target in some way, such as lowering abilities, hindering effectiveness of the target's actions, or causing damage over time, or in layman's terms, has a negative effect status on the targeted character. Hakar's debuff was aggressive, initially dealing 875 to 1125 damage, and a further 263 to 337 damage every 2 seconds, this ending after 10 seconds if the target can isolate itself from others. You see, normally debuffs cannot be allowed to exit outside their respective raids, and if a player were to teleport out of one with the debuff still being active, it would be removed. What was overlooked here, due to a programming oversight however, was that both Hunters and Warlocks pets and non-playable characters, or NCPs as they're known in the game, were able to carry it as well. When Hunters or Warlocks did battle, he or she would summon their pets to do damage, and these pets became affected by the same debuff. When players dismissed their pets, instead of the debuff being removed, it would remain dormant until they were summoned again. This is how the World of Warcraft would become turned on its head. After battles, players would often go to heavily populated areas to sell items or to repair gear. When there, they would resummon their pets, but this time the debuff was still active. Being heavily populated, disease spread quickly from player to player with no way to stop it. Low-level players were killed instantly by the effects. Within mere hours, corrupted blood had infected entire cities and left them uninhabitable, and a sea of bodies blanketed highly populated areas for days. NPCs who were infected also spread it outside of Zul'Gurub, and worst of all, didn't show signs that they were even contaminated. Players, for fear of being killed, initially did what they could to avoid the virtual plague, with cities being abandoned completely in favour of far-off zones. Blizzard actually made health notices within the game about the outbreak, but had to keep changing their position because they couldn't effectively deal with the problem. This was completely due to the players themselves. Their faults? Being human. People in control of priests and shamans characters within the game set out to heal the infected, with others, who couldn't help, acting as public servants in the best way they could, by guiding people away from the infected areas. Some chose a darker path, intentionally infecting others. They would purposely contract the disease and make their pets do so also, before teleporting into populated cities to spread the disease, thus forming a vicious circle of healing and infection. There was also the stupidity factor. People would hear about the pandemic within the game and log onto the servers just to see what it was like for themselves. The corrupted blood incident had both a social and cultural impact on the players, the gaming industry, and even the world. So much so that it actually garnered interest from the Centre for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC for short, and epidemiologists from around the world. Because of players' real-life reactions within the game, the corrupted blood incident became an actual case study for many of them, and papers are written and displayed in such publications as the Journal of Epidemiology and a follow-up in the Journal of Science. It actually wasn't the only incident where players died unexpectedly in a game. Something similar happened in The Sims, where players died by a curable disease that originated from a dirty guinea pig. The difference there being that there was no way for the disease to spread to a different player's character. The responses in Corrupted Blood, however, were unique and incredibly human. The priests and shamans, showing both fear and empathy, were actually doing more harm than good by extending the source of the pandemic and keeping the infected alive for them to spread the disease. Players who teleported from different cities mimic people boarding flights or boats, going to cities and infecting them, similar to the real-life SARS outbreak. Those who spread the disease on purpose in highly populated areas generated security suspicions similar to how bioterrorists would exploit a pandemic, and those who employed the stupid factor I mentioned earlier took the role of vermin or pests, acting like rats or insects that spread malaria or bubonic plague. Hell, even after the event, many people justified their actions by saying they just wanted to complete the quest. Just like John from Software turning up to work when he's sick with the actual flu and spreading it to the rest of us because of the economic factor, and he just wants to get paid. The Centre for Disease Control and Prevention actually contacted Blizzard looking for statistics on the event for research on epidemics, but were told it was simply a glitch, a fascinating but accidental case, with Blizzard's chief of staff, Shane Debris, saying they just forgot to set a code that would clear the debuff from the hunter's pets. A week after it began, and after programmer-imposed quarantines, hard resets to the servers, and patches to the virtual world, patch 1.8 Dragons of Nightmare was released. Pets could no longer catch the disease, nor could it exist outside of the Zul'Gurub instance. So with that, Warcraft and its players were finally able to return to a less chaotic world.